Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're going to kick off very soon our webinar for the Global Digital Report 2023. Just give people a few moments to join. You can see participants coming in. Great. Looks good. Yeah. So I think let's kick off. We've got loads of people joining us. As I said, welcome everybody. Really pleased to have you all join us today. It's a very exciting time in the agency for us. It's the launch of our Global Digital Report for 2023. We launch this report every year. It's full of tons of really exciting, interesting data on what's happening in the social, mobile, e-commerce landscape and everything to do with the internet, basically. It's a huge report, and so we're here to guide you through some of the biggest headlines that we think are interesting, that are going to really impact us in the world of social media. You'll see that there are quite a few data-heavy slides in this presentation. Don't worry, you don't have to screen capture everything. We will share the link during the presentation to where you can download the full report in all of its glory. So just to kick off, let me introduce who's on the call with you today. You've got myself. I am Mobbie Nazir. I'm the Global Chief Strategy Officer at We Are Social. And I'm also joined today by Paul Greenwood. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Greenwood, Head of Research and Insights.
Great. And before we kind of go into all of the detail of the report, just a little bit of an introduction to We Are Social. We are a socially led creative agency, the largest in the world. We have over 1,300 people all across the world in 18 different offices now. Every year we add a couple more to the list. And we work with some of the most innovative and pioneering brands globally. So we have a short list of some of our clients here on the slide. You'll see we work with brands from all sectors, from finance to fashion, gaming to groceries, technology to travel and automotive. But the main thing that we do for all of our clients is to help them build and maintain relevance in today's ever-shifting marketing landscape. And that's why thought leadership like this is so important to us. And we produce it annually, but we also share it as much as we can with all of our clients and with the wider industry. So there's a couple of things that we do every year. Global Digital Report is one of them. We're going to talk about it today. But some other things that we also do is we do cultural insights. We do an annual report called Think Forward. But we also provide a daily cultural tracker on Instagram. So if you want to get your fix of what's happening in the social media landscape on a more frequent basis, really driven by social trends and social cultural behavior, then go to thefeed.global. You can find it on Instagram and follow us there. So that's our sort of timely, daily, weekly reporting. But back to Global Digital Report and what we're going to take you through today. So this report has really become an essential resource for marketers all around the world. We've been publishing it now for 11 years. And every year it gets bigger and the view count gets larger. So last year we had over 19 million views on this report. So it just goes to show how heavily used it is across the industry. We're going to be taking you through some of the global headlines, but actually there are detailed individual country reports for 195 countries. So it's very likely that your local market is included in this report. So if you want to know how any of the data that we're going to talk about today plays out in your specific market, then do go and look at your local country report. You can see the URL on the screen there, wearesocial.com/digital-2023. That's where you can get hold of all of the reports, the global and all of the country reports as well. So do go and check it out after this presentation. Putting together such a big report wouldn't be possible without lots of different partners. We produce this report in collaboration with Kepios and Meltwater, but we also work with a number of data partners that we want to give a big shout out to and thanks. So these are all the data partners that have been involved in helping us compile this report. So kicking off into some of the big headlines for this year, we've rounded it up as to 6 things that you should know that are shifting in the social and digital landscape. So I'm going to hand over to Paul now to take you through those 6 headlines.
Thanks, Mobbie. So yeah, these are some big numbers, big stats, things that we think everyone should know. The first thing we wanted to point out in the report is that actually time spent using the internet is slightly down. It's down by 5% year on year. And that's kind of understandable. It's come back down to like 2019 levels, pre-pandemic. And you can understand why in 2020 and 2021 that time spent on the internet actually increased. We digitized our whole lives, we worked online, we shopped online, we socialized online. Pretty much everything was done online while we're in lockdowns. And I guess what we're seeing now is just like a recalibration where we're back to our normal levels of spending time on the internet. I guess that one thing for clients and for brands when you're thinking about digital marketing is that it may be a little bit more difficult to reach those people that you want to reach online, basically because they're spending a little less time there. So time on the internet is slightly down. Having said that, time spent using social media has actually increased 2% year on year. And we see this pretty regularly, like small jumps in 2%. It now stands for about 36% of all time spent on the internet. And that's a really positive thing when you think about social media, especially for us as marketers and as people are thinking about where to move budgets in 2023. Social seems to be the place where users are going to spend their time when they're on the internet. So I think that's just a nice little overview of a couple of stats there. We then look at the largest platforms out there. So the largest platforms consistently stay the same. We've been doing this, like Mobbie said, for about 11 years. And Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, those kind of accounts, those kind of platforms are always the biggest and always keep on growing. I don't think that's ever going to change when you look at some of these numbers. And WeChat still has quite a way to go to even reach Instagram. And while the platforms are evolving their core offering and trying different things, the core of each of those different platforms that are the largest stays relatively the same. You know, WhatsApp is a messaging service. YouTube is a video platform. Facebook is a place where I go and post status updates. Those things will not change. They may change slightly in terms of the formats and functionality, but what people go to those platforms won't change. And we know how to activate across these platforms as a business, and I think a lot of marketers do, and we know how to do that successfully. So we know how to use these platforms and we know how to get the best out of them. What is interesting though, and I think this is one of the biggest shifts that we've seen in this report, is time spent using social media apps. Now, in the 11 years that we've been doing this, YouTube has always topped the charts, but this year we have a newcomer, and that is TikTok. TikTok, on average, a global user will spend 23.5 hours per month on it, which is a vast amount. It's double the amount of Instagram, and it has really revolutionized how people consume videos in particular. It's now much more lo-fi, it's portrait, it's more chaotic, it's got really kind of fast-moving edits, and you see that playing out on other platforms and in other media and other advertising. And we know that some of these platforms are probably a little concerned about that because they've been trying to, I guess, respond to that. So YouTube have gone hard on shorts and Instagram have gone all in reels. But the TikTokification of the social media landscape is real. And I think that's one of the key things that we want to pull out here. And what I mean by that is, one, the platforms are trying to replicate and challenge TikTok at its own game. But two, TikTok content is spreading and disseminating into other platforms. When it comes to WhatsApp, I get sent TikToks all the time. I see TikTok on Instagram. I see it on Twitter. It's been able to disseminate its content into other platforms, and that's what's made it so successful. So it's something that brands should definitely be considering and thinking about going forward. It's a very, very sticky platform where people want to spend time. Another thing that we like to look at is social media overlaps for the audiences. So what we mean by this is, I pulled out one of the stats here, is 82.5% of TikTok users will also be found on Facebook. And this matters because in the past, when we've looked at this kind of data, people have drawn conclusions where they've gone, well, if I just activate across 2 different platforms, I will probably reach 99% of my audience. And that is kind of true. If you're just going from pure play mass reach and you're looking to really not, like, I guess, target people in a kind of a blunt and kind of a sledgehammer way, but it's a lot more nuanced than that. And we know this because when we look at how and why people go to these platforms, it changes considerably. So what we're looking at here is activities by platform. So what do people want to get out of the platforms? So when you look at TikTok, nearly 80% of people go to TikTok for funny or entertaining content. It is a place to be entertained. That's 20 percentage points more than Instagram. When you look at Twitter, for example, 61% of people go to Twitter to keep up to date with news and current events. It really sets that agenda when it comes to the news and has an oversized impact on that. Obviously, everyone goes to Instagram to post pictures. What else would you be doing? And 70% of people go to Facebook to keep up with friends and family. So people have different needs and wants and motivations for using these platforms. And brands should be mindful of that and adapt their comms accordingly. So looking at those kind of 6 big headlines, there's 3 things we want to say. So to recap, time on the internet is down, but time spent on social media is up. And that matters if you're thinking about where to put your budgets in 2023. Largest platforms continue to get bigger and always will, but where the consumers are spending their time is definitely shifting, and it's shifting towards TikTok in particular and video content. And while there's still large overlaps across platforms, the motivations are different for each of those different platforms. So I guess, just give your audiences what they're expecting and what they're going to those platforms for in your content when you're activating on them. So that's a little roundup. We also have a lot of other data in the report. That's just like a really top line view. And we have, for example, the most searched for Wikipedia pages and like lots of other content and data there. So this one is a little question. So who was the most searched for, Jeffrey Dahmer or Her Royal Highness Elizabeth II? One was a notorious 70s killer, the other one a head of state who served for 70 years. So we know the answer, and the answer is it was Jeffrey Dahmer. I guess the implication here for brands is never underestimate the power of true crime, and obviously the press machine at Netflix. But please go and have a look at the reports. There's loads and loads of data in there. This is just like a taster for you.
Great. Thanks, Paul, for taking us through those top headlines. So what we're going to do now is move on from those global headlines across social media to do a bit of a deeper dive into individual platforms and what are we seeing happening on those platforms. Before I move on, just a reminder to you, we actually have some time at the end of the presentation today. If you do have any questions as we're going through any of this, please pop those into the Q&A box that you'll find at the bottom of the screen. We will get to them at the end. So yeah, if you've got any questions as you go, just share them with us. So when we think about what's happening on individual social media platforms, it's useful to frame it in what's happening in the social media landscape overall. We talked in our Think Forward report just a couple of months ago about how social media platforms are evolving. There is one thing that's always constant in social and the digital media landscape, and that is change. And that's one of the things that makes this industry so exciting to work with. And last year was no exception, with all the major social platforms going through significant change and evolution. And we talked in Think Forward about what were some of the drivers for those changes. Firstly, platforms are changing in anticipation of new consumption patterns, but in some cases are also driving new consumption patterns. Things like the shift from algorithmic to the interest graph has created whole new consumption patterns in social media that's changed the landscape considerably. We're also seeing platforms changing in response to new and upcoming platforms, so reactively changing to the upstarts in this space, coming out with new features and functionality all the time. And we're also seeing them trying to future-proof their revenue streams and keep investors happy. So it's a landscape of plenty of change. And, you know, in this landscape, we've seen a lot happen in digital media in 2022. All of the platforms, as I said, have gone through some significant changes. Twitter's become a privately owned company under the management of eccentric billionaire Elon Musk. Instagram's been going through an identity crisis. The whole shift to the interest graph is something that they've been playing around with. More recently, they dropped their live shopping functionality. We've seen a winter of discontent for crypto, where with an already volatile crypto market, we've seen the crypto exchange FTX, which was last year valued at 32 billion, file for bankruptcy on the 11th of November. with an estimated 8 billion of customers' funds going missing. We've seen Meta pivoting towards the metaverse and starting to articulate what that will mean for their users. All the while, we've seen TikTok continuing to disrupt, empowering a whole new generation of creators and communities through that shift to the interest graph. Announcing that they're not a social network, but an entertainment platform, and now more recently a social commerce platform. And also we've seen Google, solid, dependable Google that always hits its revenue target, starting to get a bit nervous. And all of that change is generating a lot of media headlines and hype. And what we're going to do today is just look at some of those big media headlines throughout the year through the lens of the data that we see in the Global Digital Report. And in many cases, we'll show you that actually what the data shows us is that there's a lot of hype and misrepresentation in the media when it comes to the status and fortunes of social media platforms. So we're going to analyze some of those stories, bust a few myths, and then talk about implications for brands. So let's start with Twitter. As I said, Elon has very reluctantly bought Twitter, and that's caused a lot of change in the platform. We've seen a lot of new features and functionality being released in a very rapid fashion, and we've seen a lot of reaction from the marketplace. So exactly what has been going on, and is this really the start of the great Twitter fail whale that is being talked about in the media at the moment? So some of the background to these stories is, well, first of all, 90% of Twitter's revenues come from advertising. That is widely reported in the industry and the financial press. So it's a hugely important revenue stream for them. And looking at recent news and articles from the likes of Reuters and CNN, we're hearing that there's a lot of change in this advertising revenue. Ad spending on Twitter has been reported as falling by 70% in December, according to Reuters. And recent research from CNN shows that of the top 1,000 advertisers on Twitter, 55% had stopped spending on the platform in December, and more recently that's increased to just over 60%. So that's especially damaging news during the Christmas season, when advertising spends usually increase. So what is Elon doing to try and make up for this shortfall? Well, he's not going down without a fight, unsurprisingly. There's been a lot of changes happening at Twitter. First of all, he's announced a subscription model. So we have now grey, blue and gold ticks. So this subscription model is an attempt to drive some revenue for Twitter. The blue tick, for example, you pay $8 a month for it. I think there's only around 225,000 people who've currently signed up for that. So it doesn't take a maths genius to realize that that alone is not going to make up for the shortfall in the revenues. But there are other things happening as well. Twitter is also moving to more of an algorithmic model as per TikTok. So now there is a For You feed on Twitter, which is the default feed and allows you to see content from people that you may not be directly following. So actually exposes you to more content than you would have done before, and hopefully creates more sticky environment for users. We're also seeing Twitter playing around with the format. So famously, it's always been very short form, but what we're going to see in the future is Twitter is going to become very, very long. So posts like these, up to 2,800 characters long, are now enabled on the platform, shifting it to becoming more like a blog platform, not just a microblog platform. So lots of potential changes in features and functionality coming from Twitter, and no clear idea yet, which of these are going to succeed and which are not. So it's an interesting time for advertisers in considering being on this platform. But when we look at the Global Digital Report data, we actually see a bit more of a positive story for Twitter than has been reported in the media. What we're actually seeing is a really healthy increase in ad reach year on year. So we're seeing a growth of nearly 30% year on year on people that you can reach through advertising. So clearly the platform still has an audience which is continually growing, even if advertisers are not currently taking advantage. And I think it's important to say we really shouldn't underestimate the power of Twitter, and its impact on culture is way beyond its current size. Its user base is the same as Pinterest, but plays a much bigger role in setting the news agenda and in real-time cultural moments. A very recent one is this one that we've depicted here, which was Sam Smith's fabulous outfit during the Brits. which got very quickly overlaid with the Chinese spy balloon story that was going on in the US within a matter of minutes on Twitter and had gone viral. So a really good example of how Twitter plays a massively outside role when it comes to culture and real-time moments. And the data here is showing that there's potential growth there as well. So the key takeouts for us for this when it comes to Twitter is that, yes, brands are still figuring out what to make of the new ownership of the platform with all the new ideas and features and functionalities that is coming out. This is showing a bit of a delay in advertising and experimentation on the platform. But the platform itself still has a very significant role to play in real-time moments, although that is increasingly under threat from the likes of TikTok. But people and brands that do pay to have a presence on the platform are going to have an outsized voice at this time. So still a very interesting and exciting platform for brands to consider. So that sort of ends where we're going to look at for Twitter for now. Now moving on to TikTok.
Yeah, I can talk you through TikTok. So TikTok, I think every kind of meeting I'm in for the last 3 months or so, someone's mentioned TikTok, and it does continue to disrupt. The example we've got here is Binley Mega Chippy. For those of you who don't know what a chippy is, it's a British delicacy of deep fried fish and deep fried chips. And this is an unassuming chip shop from Coventry. And what happened, I think last year or maybe just the year before, basically a theme tune was created around it and posted to TikTok, and it became a sonic meme that just traveled around the UK and became this huge cultural moment. So much so that when you go to Binley Mega Chippy, there's like queues outside the door. It's probably the best known chip shop in the world, and it's probably the most profitable at the moment. But it's interesting how TikTok can take something so small and unassuming and make it huge and massive. And that's what's really exciting about the platform. And when we look at the numbers that we have in the data report, we see there's some large numbers. So we have over 1 billion users, which is up, and it's really increasing year on year. And we see that the advertising reach has jumped nearly 20%. So that's some really positive big numbers. And let's not forget, at the beginning of the deck, we talked you through, it's now become the platform where people spend their time, with 23.5 hours per month spent on it. So it's a really sticky platform. And so I think it makes marketers really excited. We're trying to figure out what they could do with it. And while these numbers are really positive, it's not all that rosy. There's some news headlines coming out of the US in terms of what might happen with TikTok. The US government's already banned it for government workers, and that might be rolled out to wider society. There's people in the US government thinking, how can they carve out TikTok US from TikTok global, to kind of create a space between China and the US. If those kind of things started to happen, these numbers would take a massive hit and things could change quite drastically in a very short amount of time. But TikTok has these huge numbers right now. And why does it have these huge numbers? Well, it's kind of to what Mobbie's already said. There we go. And it's already, it's not just a social media platform, it's an entertainment platform. And it's come out and said it's an entertainment platform. This is a quote from Blake Chenley, who said as much. And what he goes on to say is like, the significance is different, and it's a massive difference. And we've talked about this a lot at We Are Social around how social media platforms are kind of refocusing their efforts on either being a social platform where you go and follow friends and family and people that you know, and a media platform, which is where you go and get entertained. And TikTok has carved out a very interesting niche in the latter. And as it's become an entertainment platform, it's been able to disrupt video. So video has now changed dramatically from what it was 5 years ago, which would have been desktop and landscape. It's now portrait. It's quite quirky. It has lots of overlays and a lot of extreme edits. It's just very interesting in terms of it feels quite chaotic, but also quite fun at the same time. And it definitely reflects Gen Z's humor and outlook on life. So right now it's full of absurdist humor, and it's really interesting and really fun to go and spend some time and get into one of those rabbit holes that I've talked about already. So it's disrupting video content. It's also looking to redefine the creator economy. So this is the data that we have in the report. And what it's looking at is the top most followed accounts on TikTok, Insta and Twitter. What I love about these different data points is it definitely ages the platform. You know exactly when the platform came of age. and you know what its purpose is. So on Twitter, for example, you have Barack Obama and Donald Trump, so obviously political and from 2008. On Instagram, you have like Cristiano Ronaldo and Kylie Jenner, Ariana Grande, the noughties, and like the 2010s, but like film stars and reality celebrities and singers and sports stars. And what's interesting about those two platforms is the people who are popular on them were famous before they were on those platforms. They were famous for something else. When you look at TikTok, what we're seeing here, especially across like the likes of Kabe Lame and Charli D'Amelio, is that these people became famous on social media, and they make a lot of money on social media. They are true social media stars. So it's helped redefine the whole creator economy, and TikTok can make an ordinary person very, very famous and very, very wealthy as a result. And it wants to be more than just entertainment. It wants to really start to play in the customer journey. And there's other things that are happening around TikTok. So Google released some research which said that 40% of Gen Z start their search on TikTok and Instagram. So it is becoming and playing a bigger role in discovery when it comes to brands and when it comes to content and products. Like I've said, around the creator economy, it is redefining that, and it's putting its money where its mouth is. It's about to release a Creator 2.0 fund, and it's considering how TikTok creators could start charging users for watch their videos. So really helping TikTok creators bring in new generation and then monetize their content. And we know that it's really good for live shopping and trying to disrupt the whole shopping experience so it becomes shopping as entertainment. It has a really strong integration with Shopify, and it's when you look at a live shopping experience, it feels like QVC, but like QVC on steroids. So it's really playing around with what the purchase cycle could look like. And it wants to go further than that. This is really interesting as well. Like this is on the left is a job description posted on LinkedIn for TikTok. I think this came out a couple of weeks ago. And basically what a logistics solutions manager is in a global fulfillment center is a warehouse manager. And basically they're looking to close that loop in terms of the purchase and then actually the logistics of delivering it. And there's a reason why it wants to do that. It's because commerce, social commerce in 2025, 2 years away, it's expected to top $1.2 trillion. And TikTok wants to play a significant role in that. And when you look at all these different things, when you look at it in its total, you see that actually TikTok wants to be the new Amazon. It wants to be the new Amazon for Gen Z. It wants to be a marketplace. And that's what's really exciting. And that's the ambition of the platform. So what does this mean for brands? Well, I've talked a lot about consumer journeys over the last couple of minutes. So we know that shopping will be an entertainment form now, and it's one that will be triggered by emotions. It'll be a pay-to-play platform, it'll be programmatic, and it'll be driven by that really powerful algorithm. Purchase will be completed in app, and it'll make the whole journey seamless. So what's really interesting for us as well is when you look at challenger brands, it will make commerce and social commerce much more democratic. And you'll see some new brands who have TikTok first strategies come through and become really, really big. So that is TikTok for 2023.
Great, thanks, Paul. So we're going to move on to our next deep dive, which is looking at Google and what's happening in the search landscape. As I said at the start, Google is starting to get a bit nervous this year for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, and most recently, they're getting nervous that they're losing the race to incorporate AI technology into search. So I'm sure you will all seen the recent news that $100 billion was wiped off Google's or Alphabet's share price when it went to market with Bard, which is their AI-powered search engine to rival ChatGPT. It released its first ever demo of this hotly anticipated technology, Bard, to show how it could help answer questions using the James Webb Space Telescope as its subject matter. Some observant astronomers quickly pointed out that the information it was serving was actually wrong. And news around this went viral, and $100 billion was instantly wiped off their share price. So why are they getting nervous? Well, as I said, they have competition in this space. They potentially rushed to get their demo Bard out in face of competition such as Bing, which has now integrated ChatGPT, which is the AI platform that's taken the world by storm over the last couple of months. ChatGPT is really amazing. It set a new record for the fastest growing user base for a consumer app. Just to put it in context, ChatGPT has reached 100 million users in just 2 months since launching. And if you compare that to TikTok, who took about 9 months to get to 100 million users, and Instagram took more than 2 years. So getting there in 2 months is pretty impressive. But I think actually the reality is that share price fall from Google was a massive overreaction because, and here's the thing, ChatGPT makes mistakes too, a lot of them. So neither platform is actually perfect. And this technology is still very much in its infancy, and it's still too early to declare a winner. But one thing is for sure, search is evolving, and we are going to see how AI is incorporated in it in the future. But the second thing that's got Google a bit nervous is the impact that social media is having on search journeys. Now, Paul talked about that data earlier on just now. It's Google's own research data that shows that 40% of search journeys now start on Instagram or TikTok. And we have the senior vice president from Google talking about when young people, are looking for a place to go for lunch, they don't go to Google Maps or search, they're going to TikTok or Instagram. So social is stealing search, and it's a huge shift in consumer behavior that we're seeing. And both of these developments are things that Google definitely needs to keep a close eye on, and they most certainly are from their moves and the announcements that they're making. But what does the data show us in terms of how much Google really has to fear? So here we have the share of search engine referrals for all of the major competitors that Google has. And you can see from this that in terms of Google's share of search engine referrals, they've got very little to be nervous about at the moment. They have this market sewn up, but they have had it for 20 odd years. They currently stand at 92% market share, healthy profits, and a huge amount of dominance in this space. But when it comes to web traffic referrals from social media, we are starting to see some interesting shifts. So, for example, we've picked out Instagram here. Now, whilst it's from a small base, we have seen a significant increase in share of traffic from Instagram this year, 115%. And we've also seen some healthy increases from other platforms like Twitter, which is up 34%. And I think what's really interesting about this data is that this is likely only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the impact that social has on the customer journey. A survey from Simplicity DX recently found that 71% of shoppers who discover a product on social media don't actually click through from social to the brand site. They go to the brand site separately. So all of that means that while social media platforms are undeniably having a huge impact on source of discovery for today's shoppers, the actual direct line impact of that is hard to nail down. So these numbers probably underrepresent the amount of people that are finding and discovering brands through social media. So social-driven search is a thing that Google definitely needs to be afraid of, and is continuing to chip away at their business, as they have themselves said. The other thing that's interesting to note from the data is that social is potentially impacting search in a less intentional way. So I think it's kind of disrupting the journey before people actively begin to search. So given the increased role that Google has indicated that social plays in search, it's interesting to see that only 50% of people say they intentionally go to social media to actively search for brands. That means that potentially 50% of people on social are discovering brands, products, and informations in a more fluid, less intentional way. And we talk about this in length in our Think Forward report, in our trend Textured Discovery, which is a really interesting trend that shows how discovery behaviors are changing, driven by audiences looking for more visual, entertaining, relatable content from like-minded individuals. And platforms like Instagram and TikTok can really fulfill those needs with UGC-driven content, which is delivered in quick to-the-point video formats, as we talked about earlier. And research shows that 79% of people say they're influenced by UGC in purchase decisions, showing the power that social really has on the search and discovery journey. So our key takeouts from all of this is, firstly, AI-driven search is in its early infancy, but has the potential to significantly impact the competitive landscape. Hard to tell who the winners are going to be in that, in that race at the moment. Secondly, search and discovery in social is becoming a lot more scalable through quick form video, peer-to-peer platforms, and creator recommendations. So it's a really exciting space for brands. And as a result of this, thirdly, there's an opportunity to start to experiment with incorporating social SEO strategies for platforms like TikTok and Instagram as a priority in your brand marketing activities. So social SEO activities, on platforms like TikTok, still very new. It's an opportunity to test and learn and, potentially experiment while CPMs are still low. It's all about researching and understanding the keywords that your audience are searching for and incorporating those in your videos. In September last year, TikTok actually increased post descriptions from 300 characters to over 2,000, allowing brands to make their videos much more discoverable and reach a much larger audience. So lots of opportunity in this space, we think.
Thanks, Mobbie. So on to the final little deep dive. And then obviously we're open to questions, so feel free to add any questions into the Q&A. So we're going to look at Meta, and Meta has begun to articulate what the metaverse is to its consumers and to its investors. And this is a bit more of a future gazing one, but it's super, super interesting. And we think it will have an impact in the short term on social and how people spend their time online and socialize online. So when you look at Meta, so Meta has a really dominant position in the marketplace when it comes to, one, it's the world's most used platforms. It's 3 of the 4 top, all with over 2 billion active users there. And there's also data in the report which shows that Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook are the most favorite platforms as well. So when you ask individuals which platforms do they love, they say Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. So there's a lot of love and a lot of people working on those platforms and using those platforms. Facebook alone has 3 billion active users on a monthly basis. And so it has scale, it has reach, it has a lot of opportunity, and it has a lot of attention on it because everyone wants to know what Meta is going to do next. And Mark Zuckerberg's been pretty clear in what he wants and where he's staking a claim and the future of Meta. So in the next few years, he thinks it's going to be all around metaversal worlds, the name is Meta, and also virtual reality, both the hardware and the software. He's been super clear about that, and he's now trying to make that work for him. And what's interesting in the data that we see is we've been tracking interest in terms of virtual worlds and VR devices over time. The bottom line shows metaverse and the top line shows virtual reality. And obviously there's a spike in October 2021 when Meta rebrands as Meta, when Facebook rebranded as Meta. But then from there on in, the 2 lines kind of follow and kind of align in terms of interest and popularity. Towards the end of the graph, what we're seeing is actually they're starting to diverge away from each other. So people aren't necessarily linking VR with virtual worlds. And there's some more data in the report as well, which then looks at metaversal gaming worlds. And this is really, really interesting because when you look at the top line, the likes of Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, these are really, really popular, gaming worlds, metaversal worlds that don't have VR as an integral component in it. And when you look at Horizon Worlds, which is all around VR, that's a much smaller user base there. And I guess this is what the opportunity is for Mark Zuckerberg. If you can link VR to gaming worlds, then that's where the kind of revenue stream will come from. But right now, people aren't making that connection just yet. And so it may take a few years for that to come to fruition. So I guess we want to know, what is it about gaming worlds that we can learn for as a social media agency? What I find super, super interesting is this kind of piece of information that came out a couple of years ago. And it's 60% of Gen Z believe how you present yourself online is more important than how you present yourself in real life. Now, as a very, very old millennial, I find this stat really quite mind-blowing because I would never even consider I would consider, but I would never spend as much time or more time making sure that my online presence and my online identity was better than my offline one. But when you think about Gen Z, they've grown up on Roblox, they've grown up on Minecraft, they've grown up on Fortnite. And these aren't just gaming places. These are spaces where they hang out, where they spend time, where they meet new people, where they engage in events and entertainment. So obviously their online presence matters to them. And so we think this is what's going to have a bigger shift on social at the very beginning over the next couple of years or so. So what does the future of social look like when it's been informed by gaming worlds and gaming experiences? Well, this is not. I will try this. There we go. A little technical fault. So this is what it's going to look like. It's going to really reflect Gen Z values, basically. So Gen Z are really stamping their values on gaming worlds, and we can expect this to flow through into social media. And what we mean by that, and their values that they really love, is like they want to be inclusive and they want to be representative. They are going to be all about elaborate self-expression and articulation online. It's going to be around community, and it's always going to be around community and collaboration. And the other key thing here is it's all going to be built on ownership and originality. People will want a stake in the worlds that they're building. And so we can see these values transfer over into social as we progress over the next few years. So what does this all mean for brands? Well, there's three things that I think are really interesting. So as people engage with their audiences in innovative and immersive worlds, that'll create, people will start engaging and brands will start engaging with their audiences, and around their shared values. Immersive worlds will allow brands to create really strong emotional connections with their audiences, more so than just a typical social experience, which will drive loyalty and advocacy. And if these brands are creating worlds that are really, really popular and important to their consumers, it will flip advertising models on its head. So instead of disrupting the user experience, brands can create these interactive, engaging experiences where users will actively seek them out. So it will change the kind of a whole makeup of advertising. So it's really exciting and a really interesting way that we can tap into these exciting new worlds. So there's 4 key takeaways before we open up to Q&A. So looking at the main headlines, 1, Twitter could happen, but we feel like there's definitely a renewed interest there, and the platform could definitely capitalize on that. TikTok is definitely making moves to be the new Amazon for Gen Z. It really wants to become a marketplace. Search is evolving and behaviors are shifting, just as Mobbie was describing, and brands need to be on the front foot and adapt to those changing times. And whilst Meta is still defining what the metaverse is, it needs to land a few things. And if it does, it will have massive implications for social media marketing. So exciting times, lots of data, and we're now open for questions.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Yes, I can see some questions have come in. If you have any more, please do share them in the Q&A box. I will kick off with the first, which is actually from Ellie De Silva. So hi, Ellie. Thanks for joining us. Great question. So with a subscription model on Twitter and Mark Zuckerberg mentioning a similar thing looking to be implemented on Instagram, can we expect this to become the new normal and seen on platforms like TikTok? Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. It is something that we obviously have also noted, and I think it is really interesting what Meta have announced around their subscription model as well. I think what makes it more interesting is that because they have billions of users, it could genuinely be a significant revenue driver for them. So I think for a platform like, for platforms like in the Meta stable, this is a great development. I do think it does sort of show an interesting underlying trend of potentially consumers being willing to trade off paying for a platform in order to have greater control on what they see on that platform and greater privacy and security and trust. So I think, that's been an age-old sort of balance of, well, a platform is free, therefore you get very little say in how we use your data, versus, well, if you paid for the platform, you would have a bit more say in how we use your data. And we've been talking for many years about consumers taking more control over their data. And I think it's really interesting now to see a big platform like Meta start to experiment with this. So yeah, I think it could pave the way towards, more subscription models. Having said that, we've seen subscription models in other areas, starting to struggle. So you always have to create value, right? So for example, Netflix has struggled with their subscription fees lately. So you have to always make sure there is enough value you're getting in return for the money that you're paying. So those are my thoughts. I don't know, Paul, if you have anything else to add to that.
No, not really. My brain went to exactly where yours went to in terms of the scale of the Meta suite of apps. Like each of those have got 2 billion monthly active users. That could become a huge revenue stream for Facebook and for Instagram. But yeah, security, privacy, data, It's interesting. I remember talking about it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and then we're like, oh, will it come around? And then just took Elon Musk to buy Twitter, and suddenly everyone's following suit. So yeah, it's a really interesting time around that.
Yeah, yeah. Another question from an anonymous user. So Instagram have announced they're going back to their roots and focusing on photos. Do you think this is a good move by them, considering videos are most popular on social? So I'll throw it to Paul, but I think it's a good question. Instagram has been, you know, as we said, going through a bit of an identity crisis. So Paul, where do you think Instagram is netting out?
So I think in terms of the feed, I think it's going back to the feed is a really good move for them. The feed was a gold mine for them. Like I would spend so much time going through my own feed, curating it, also going through other people's feeds and spending time on there. And when you think about the DNA of Instagram and where it's come from, it's always been a photo sharing app, and that's why people go to it. Stories, reels are interesting and useful, but I don't engage with them as much. I don't think people engage with them as much as they would as the feed. So I think unpacking what Instagram means to people and having a much more elevated aesthetic to it on the feed, I think is a really clever move. I think that's what people know them for. I think it's what people and users want them to do. And I think it can rejuvenate and offer a real difference of opinion compared to the other platforms as well. So yeah, I think I like the idea of this. I'm always a bit wary when another platform kind of mimics another platform and tries to head off any kind of competition that way. Yeah, so I think it's playing to its base and it's playing to its core audience and also the creators that it's generated and supported throughout the years.
Yeah, yeah. We had a few data source questions, so let me just quickly answer those. What was the source on the stat around 71% of consumers not clicking through via social? That was a survey by a company called Simplicity DX. And then there was also a question about the stat around 60% of Gen Z considering their online identity more important than offline. I think that was a stat from Squarespace. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, Squarespace in 2021.
Yeah, okay. So hopefully that answers the data questions. Moving on to a question from Robert Smart. Oh no, that was the data question. So there was another question from an anonymous user. I'm just going to pick one part of this question, which was around Netflix's latest move towards testing a For You page like Entertainment Hub. Any thoughts on the potential crossover between long and short content platforms, i.e. TikTok versus Netflix? I do think it's really interesting. We talked a lot about YouTube's shift to short form video. I also saw in TikTok's announcement around the Creator Fund, they're actually incentivizing creators to create videos longer than a minute. So it's, you know, you always see convergence between platforms, you know, long to short. There's a role for short form video. There's a role for longer form video. And I think TikTok's been obviously very successful in creating this market for short form video, but they seem to be trying to get longer and YouTube's trying to get shorter. So there's definitely an overlap between the two. Paul, any thoughts?
So yeah, it's funny because do you remember Mobbie? Was it Mobbie? Or was it M-O?
Oh yeah.
Like they tried to do a very short form version of like movies, and there was a lot of hype around it a few years ago, and I don't think it came to much. TikTok's coming at it from a different point of view. It already has a very successful business model in social media and entertainment, and people's attention spans are becoming shorter and shorter. So I don't think TikTok will ever compete with the likes of Netflix in terms of like the occasion. Netflix is very much like you sit down, you're there to watch a longer form piece of content, where TikTok is still, you might get lost in a rabbit hole for a while, but it's not something where you like, I think it's not intentional. And when it comes to the TikTokification, and I'm just glad I said that word without stumbling over it. You see it also happening on Spotify. There was a news announcement yesterday where Spotify is now testing features which will be very similar to TikTok. So I think it's not just on social platforms. I think it is pushing out into entertainment, and people are looking what they can, and other brands are looking to TikTok to see what they can learn from it. But I do think there's two separate occasions there. TikTok for one, Netflix and more kind of linear TV as a different occasion.
Mhm. Then an interesting question from Federica Pecotto on AI, and how do we think AI will be implemented in social media? So we talked a lot about AI in search. We talked less about AI in social media. We're certainly seeing, I mean, we internally are experimenting a lot with using AI to generate content in, many different ways. We've been experimenting in the office with using AI to generate ideas. We have a red telephone in reception if you want to visit us in London, which you can call and talk to actually talk to ChatGPT and give it your brief and get some ideas back. So I think there's just, there's a lot to be seen. I think there's functional benefits in terms of, being able to do low-level tasks quicker. So being able to gather information quicker in an automated fashion. You always need that human interface, obviously, to filter through the information that comes back, check for inaccuracies, and then add the creative layer on top. But, we're also seeing AI being used to, imagine new realities from a creative perspective. We've just recently done a campaign for Tinder in Italy, actually, where we used AI to generate images of love, which would be prohibited in those markets. So showing, love without boundaries, people together in environments and contexts that you wouldn't see them in the real world. So, it's just great examples of how AI is impacting productivity, but also creativity.
Yeah, like that campaign is excellent. I saw that last night. The red phone. So it gives us a baseline of ideas, and it's up to the creatives to do better than that. That's how we challenge ourselves. From a research point of view and from social data, we can pull in social data and go, can you give me a summarization of this? Can you summarize this is the word I'm looking for. And some of the tools out there are really good at going, oh, it's mixed sentiment, it's X, Y, and Z. These are the themes of conversation that are happening around this brand. So that's interesting. I was chatting to our innovation director here in the UK, and he uses Midjourney for all of his visuals and all his presentations. He can get exactly what he wants. He doesn't have to go searching for it. He can just specify what he wants. So it makes things a little bit quicker. It makes things a little bit more exciting, and it sometimes throws out an unusual output that you weren't expecting. So, but I agree with Mobbie, you need human interpretation, you need some just fact checking and just making sure everything is correct. And just let it run loose.
Yes, there was a couple of questions about Snapchat that came up, because we didn't talk much about Snapchat. It is on that initial slide in terms of the biggest platforms. It sort of ranks towards the mid to the bottom, I think. And the question was, what is our thoughts on AR filters, especially looking at Instagram or Snapchat and the potential for brands in the future? I do think AR is really interesting and really exciting. I think it leans into the extended reality theme that we talked about with gaming. I think the sort of overlap between the real world and the digital world, one way is to go full bore into the metaverse with virtual reality headsets. But another easier and actually more immediate way is AR filters, which put a digital layer on what you're seeing in the real world. So I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunity there. We are seeing, Snapchat really driving the way forward when it comes to commerce, AR-driven commerce as well. So I think, there's a lot to sort of watch out for in that space. If you want more specific data on the growth of Snapchat over the last year, do have a look at the report. We've got it broken down by country globally, so you can kind of see, see how they're doing as a business.
Yeah, we definitely, I think Snapchat's doing all right in terms of advertising reach when I remember looking at it. We didn't put it in the deck because there was no major news story around it. But I find, I think Snapchat's, like Mobbie was saying, is an interesting middle ground around what the metaverse and Web3 could be, especially augmented reality. It's one of those things where someone in the agency, Joe Weston, who runs our sports division, I was like, oh, what is the metaverse and Web3 to you? And he was like, it's any kind of technology that makes a digital experience better for me. And I think that's where the power of AR is. So if you can overlay some information onto the real world, and that blending of the real world and virtual worlds is where I reckon there's going to be a ton of value for companies. And that's where I see the power of Snapchat coming into its own in the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah, are there any other questions you wanted to get to? I think we're kind of coming up to time, so let's just check. Somebody's asked for a link to our Tinder campaign in Italy. Hopefully we can get hold of that and share it with you. I know it's been shared all over LinkedIn.
Yeah, I saw it on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's great. So we'll try and get that for you. There's a question here on YouTube, which I think is interesting. YouTube historically was the place many would use as a search engine, whether it be how-to videos or reviews. The emergence of TikToks has altered this. So do you see both platforms coexisting and thriving in the long term? Yeah, I mean, I think the whole impact of social on search, I think, is really interesting. I do remember, back in the day, getting excited about how YouTube was overtaking Google in search. And now we're talking how we're excited about TikTok overtaking YouTube in terms of time spent. So yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. I think you can't underestimate YouTube. It's a massive platform. It's got a huge repository of content. We all rely on it to teach ourselves things every day, all the time. So yeah, I think there's a long way to go for YouTube, and the recent changes in updates in functionality and shorts, I think, are going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, people still spend 23 hours a month on YouTube. It's still got a role to play in people's lives. I think it's what that role is. Like last time I wouldn't have spent any time on the YouTube was when I was looking at the halftime show for the Super Bowl, 15-minute, and then I got into a rabbit hole of all the halftime shows of the Super Bowl. But it still plays a role. I think it will be longer form content compared to TikTok. And yeah, it still can incorporate it into some SEO strategy. And the rise of the how-to hack culture, de-influencing, that is such a predominant theme that's coming out right now. And we're talking to a lot of our clients about it. So how-to videos are definitely making a comeback. Yeah,
great. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for all of your questions and for taking the time with us today. We hope you found that useful. We will be sharing the deck afterwards, and you can see the QR code up on screen now if you want to download the full report. Please do go and take a look at it. It's got a massive amount of more data in it than we've been able to share in the short time we had today. So thanks to Paul for joining me today as well, and we hope you have a really good day. Any questions, just connect with us on LinkedIn and we'll try to help you answer them. See you next time. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.